we're back in the Old Testament, and we're talking about from one of the greatest prophets in all the Old Testament, and the prophet Isaiah. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God, the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried, I am ruined, for I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips, your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, Here am I, send me. This is a message to the prophet Isaiah in the most difficult time of his life. He who gave him favor, King Uzziah, had just passed away. And the following kings would be so destructive to all of Israel. And so this was the message that was given to him at this crucial time. One of the most powerful messages we often use for mission of sending, whom shall we send me? But it has a more profound foundation to it, and I hope you enjoy it. When we talk about, you and me coming to church, it's so hard for us because when we see the world and we see the church in the world, I guess we're discouraged because we don't have the voice that we once had. Because I think it's really the church's fault. We have proclaimed the gospel that does not call for this. We are starting this series with this, that we're talking about questions that I've been asked a lot lately, and I just wanted to kind of put them in the framework of the series, and that's this. How do you know God's will for your life? A lot of you young people are going through different seasons. There's so many questions you have. How do you know God's will for your life? Secondly, I've heard a lot, is that how do you gain wisdom for living? There's so many decisions that you have to make. And I think that's kind of the hard part of being homeless, isn't it? Is that many of you are very blessed. You can make like 5, 10, 15, 20 decisions, financial decisions, horrible ones, and you'll still be okay because your relational social network will catch you. But when we go to the homeless and serve those in the streets, sometimes they make 3 or 4 bad decisions, and they have no one to catch them. They come from a destructive, abusive, violent home. Maybe they've been molested, just some atrocities in their life, and they make some decisions, and they make bad decisions, and next thing you know, they're free falling, and there is no social network to hold them. And so, it's a call. How can I make the right decisions? What wisdom can I get to make these decisions going forward? And then how do you get the right perspective for the challenges, the crises you face? I want to just really, whenever you have people coming to you and asking you for direction or counsel, this needs to be kind of like a background music to you answering the question. And that is this: how do we know God's will? How do we gain wisdom for a world that is based on the age of information? So much information, so little wisdom. How can we be people of wisdom? Proverbs tells us this: the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. One is actually not there. It's really the knowledge of the Holy is understanding. And that this is the idea, that if we know God as a Holy One, that is the basis for wisdom. There we begin our wisdom. It's understanding that God is holy. And from that foundation, we begin to receive wisdom. And the fear is reverence of this idea. So how much do you really know that God is holy? Because I think a Christian walk tends to be like, God is holy, but he's only, a little bit more holier than I am. And I'm a little more holier than unbelievers. And we don't have this huge chasm separation that just brings us this sense of despair, like there's no way I can reach God. Because we don't have that awe, that incredible sense of like, you know what it is. When you go to, like, my sons and I went to the National Park, Yosemite, right? The National Park, and we were walking, and we were really high on one of the mountains, and we got to an edge that just looked over a dead drop, right? And I saw it, and my son started walking to it, and I said, stop. That's really dangerous. And they're like, oh no, that is nothing. Like, stop. So we're going to crawl there, right? And so we got all our knees, and we started crawling, and I got like the edge would be at the edge of the table, and I got to here, and I just looked a little bit past it, and I couldn't move. Your body just freezes. And they're like, oh yeah, it's a little further. And so the first time, they're like, that's a scaredy cat. And I was frozen. Just the majesty of the grandeur of this huge precipitous drop from the mountain peak to the valley below. I just couldn't move. See, that's the awe that you're just beginning, that you and I should just be beginning to feel when we think of God. But we really don't have that. Jesus is my buddy, we start hanging out, we do this and this together, and Jesus, you're going to be in on what we do, right? Are you all in, Jesus? Okay, good, we'll do this. God, will you please bless me? We don't have that, and we're missing something huge in our decision making, in our perspective of life, when that awe just leaves. You remember the first time it really hit you like, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. Like the one you end up marrying, the first time, oh my gosh, she is beautiful, right? That sense of awe. What happens 20 years later when you lose that sense of awe? Right? Bad things happen. It's so important that we not lose the sense of awe and appreciation and the sense of holiness for someone that is our life partner. How much more for the source of all life, God Himself? That's what we're missing. We don't even begin that discussion. We just jump into, okay, let's fix this, let's do self-improvement tests and use these packages, and here's the 3 things to do, and these are corollaries for it. No, we just focus on what? Ourselves. And so I really want to start with this discussion on the fact that we worship a holy God. And to recapture, if you can, in some way, capture the awe of God, the understanding of the holy. And if you understand that, then your counsel will be completely different. And the wisdom you receive will be higher. So let's define what is God's attribute. Like if I were to ask you, like, if somebody said, what's the defining characteristic about you? What would your friends say? What would they say, like, okay, this person, if I would think any one word that encapsulates this person, what would it be? Right? Are you funny? Or are you like intelligent? Are you like really kind? What would it be? When you think about God's defining attribute, what is it? I think we all know that God is holy. He is awesome, holy. He is, for Isaiah said this, holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. And again, in biblical scripture, every time you repeat it 3 times, it's an affirmation that is set in stone and unchanging. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory. This convicts me because what does it say? That the holiness of God is where? In the whole earth. I saw it. I just described it to Yosemite. But Isaiah It's saying that the angels proclaim that if you look close enough, if you're not spiritually blind, you'll see the holiness of God everywhere displayed on the earth. We're just figuring it out because we're getting technology to see beyond the galaxies. But look, not just beyond the galaxies, the billions of stars and galaxies, but look within. The billions of cells that you have within your body. We have not even come close to the depth of that. Look at the earth. My islands are about a tongue trench. We don't have anything that can go down there. There are species that are not even discovered. But I think you'll see the holiness of God there. In your life, what is it that God has put around you that you have just lost the awe? Music used to move me, now it's just a routine. Sports used to move you, now it's just a routine. Your marriage used to move you, now it's just a routine. Your faith in God, going to church used to move you, now it's just a routine. When you lose the awe, you begin to lose so much more. For Isaiah, this is what the angels proclaim. In the beginning and now at the end of Revelation, the first proclamation of worship in the book of Revelation is what? Day and night. These are the elders and the beasts around the throne. Day and night, they never stop saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is and is to come. That's a crazy statement. Now, think about this. Like, they never stop saying this. And they never tire about it. Tell me something that you never tire of doing. Right? Right? I would never tire of eating sushi if I didn't gain weight. I would just keep eating. I would never stop. Right? They never stop saying it. What is something they never stop? They don't get tired of doing it. Right? They never, have you ever done anything you just never, oh my God, I wish this lasts forever. Ever had that moment? This is what people, those around God are never tired. It's always fresh. It's always new. And when they say it, there's always something else that they see that. And I think that's what happens. They see one facet of God, and then they see another, and they see another, and they keep, oh my gosh, that was amazing. But this is even more amazing. The awesomeness of God that they can keep repeating over and over. He is holy. This is his defining attribute. What do you think about going forward? Here's an ancient Near East idea of it in the Old Testament. Holy means to be set apart. What does it mean to be a Christian or a saint? It means you're set apart. You're different from other people. So there's uses like everybody else is doing it, doesn't apply to you. Right? You are set apart. Right? You are different. You're set for a different use. It's the idea of setting apart for God's use, God's purpose. Right? God has, your body is holy. Your sexuality is holy. Your relationships are holy. Your money is holy. Your time is holy. It's set apart for a purpose. It isn't just throw away and willy-nilly. It is set apart. In the Old Testament, the altar, we saying come to the altar. It was specific for what use? For the purposes of God, to bring offerings to the altar. It wasn't used for like anything else. The utensils were used just for the altar, for the worship of God, for the presenting of offerings. The temple was used just for the people to come to offer prayers. Remember, Jesus said this was what? Supposed to be a place of prayer, a house of prayer. You made it something not that. You were made for great things for God. But the world wants you to become something not that. And the distance between that and God's purpose for you is a distance God is calling you to address, and I hope today. It also means it's other. To be holy means you're other, categorically other. Okay? And so, like, other in the sense of being, your essence, your other. This is the idea that the pagan gods were holy in their being. In other words, in the pantheon of Greek and Roman gods, they were holy because they were completely different in their being. They weren't human. They were another category. That's why they were considered holy. However, the difference between their gods and the biblical God is that they were holy in their being, but not in their character. So you would read all these gods who were had all this incredible power, but had all this moral failure, because they were not holy both in their being and their character. Listen, you can be holy in your being. In other words, you're saint, you're a new creation. You receive Christ in your life, you move category from sinner to saint, from being unforgiven to forgiven, right? From bringing old creation to a new creation. But that doesn't mean the character has changed. And that's the process you're working on when you come to church. It's, Lord, somehow I know that I'm holy. I know that I'm your son, I know your child, but I've got to be holy in your character. And that's what this whole process that we'll be talking about when we go to Froggy Camp is, how can we move from being Christians who are holy in our status before God to Christians who are holy in our character, resembling God. And if you don't make time for that, it's not going to happen. You know? You want to look fit and you don't eat right and you don't exercise, it's not going to happen. You're not time to eat, it's just the nature of the things. And so thinking about this, look at the God of Israel. He was both holy in being and character. That's what was so offensive about the God of Israel. And so when we see that, we see the difference between Yahweh and God. Now look at our modern culture. If we analyze the previous culture, let us look at the modern culture. Look at our religions. New Age movement, Mormonism. You can be what? You can be holy in your being. You can be God. I can be God. Or, we can become gods. These are the foundational doctrines of an old paganism, remanufactured for a modern world. You're holy in your being, you and I are gods. So when you hear this thing like, I'm a God, you're a God, it's just the same old thing that's been played over and over. It's nothing new under the sun. Look at our stars that we worship in movies and music and sports. They can be what? We worship them for their talents, their wealth, their beauty. In fact, they can speak into our morality, they can speak into our politics, they can speak into our future, and they still don't need to have character. In fact, when we want to make fun of people who have terrible marriages, that's who they are. But we love them anyways, because they dump the ball, they can sing in octaves that we can never reach, right? This is the modern gods that we worship. And if you're not careful, and then your kids don't distinguish man from God, they're falling into the same idea that these are holy people. They're different. There's something to aspire to. And we fall back into the pagan religion under consumer wrappings. When we think of going forward, look at God's defining attribute. Look at this. What would define God? These are attributes that would define God. He's omnipotent, and that means he's all-powerful. He is omniscient. That means he's all-knowing. He is omnipresent. That he's present in all places. That's what makes God God. The thing about this is that these are attributes, but imagine that holiness was not central. Right? Because the idea that if there were anything the angels could say about God, they're closest to him. If there's one word that they would tell you that God is like your friends would tell you that God is like, they say in unison, in repetition, God is holy. God is holy. And it's a central part of who he is. Right? We often say in societal and kind of like in ethnic jargon, I can tell who you are by the 5 friends, right? 5 closest friends. It's the same thing that applies, right? It's like, the problem I have with that statement is, if one of those friends is not Jesus, it doesn't matter. You get all the friends you want. But we gotta come up higher. It's that idea is that God needs to be central. That holiness is the hub of all the spokes. That omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence are all spikes to the hub of holiness. Even love. As much as God is love, the angels who are closest to him did not say that. Imagine love without holiness. What do you have? Right? Well, never, really, because it's a child-centered culture. We have love without boundaries. And love without boundaries only brings terror. Imagine another attribute. Imagine omniscience. God knows everything without holiness. And we'll describe holiness later. It would be what? It would be terrifying, right? If God wasn't pure and holy, and he knew what everybody else does not know, and you hide, and the things that you do that you will not tell anybody, if he knew that, and he was not holy, that would be horrific. That would be hell, basically. When we think about this going forward, I think of God's holiness in a sense that it is described in this passage and throughout the Old Testament, and that is God is majestic. You know, he is morally perfect. He has moral perfection. He's absolutely pure. And I don't even know what that means. I can just approach it, you know, in my thoughts on what that would actually mean. That is perfect in any way, every way. And so this is how Isaiah saw it. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on the throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. And so it's this whole idea of this majestic divine being who descends, but all he can see is like the bottoms of the hems of his pants. That's all he can see, because that's all that he can see is still survive. Those who come to speak of him are angels. And even the angels can't approach God. They have wings that cover their eyes, which means his light is so immense, so awe-inspiring, that it would be threatening to their very existence, their very being. They have wings that cover their feet with a sense of humility. I think we can all know this in third world cultures, like you cover your feet, you cover your lower parts as a show of humility and respect because you are not worthy. The same idea in ancient Near East, that, and then wings that fly because they are swift to obey. It's just this incredible idea, this majestic, morally perfect God. And going forward, the idea is this, that this is a God that's unapproachable. I get that when I was crawling to the edge of that mountain. And you know, you guys should do that. Just do something super scary so you get the idea back again. Because some of you guys' all sensors are broken. And you need to just do something like that. But to freak you out and get you to the point like, oh my, if I take another step, I will die. Right? Part of the reason why I always try to do these things in my life, I try to take whatever fear is off subject, but maybe it will help you because when we live in this world, we just get what? Dumbed down. By what? Little stimulus. Like your cell phone. Like money. Like people pleasing. So you need to always awaken that awe sensor in you, that, I don't know what we want to call it, but that part where you can sense awe. And you need to do this regularly, because if you don't, you won't sense God nor desire him. Like I told you, so when I had that experience, I realized that more than ever that I was afraid of heights, right? So what did I do? I said, I'm going to do something crazy. We were missionaries in Tonga. I said, let's go to New Zealand. You know what I wanted to do? The bucket list, jump off a mountain. You know, with a bungee jump, right? And so that was the scariest thing I've ever done. And you know, I was really proud of myself because there were some chickens in front of me and they didn't do it. They walked off, you know, and I went up and I was really scared. but I jumped, and you know when I jumped, you know what I was doing the whole way down? Screaming like a little girl. Okay? I was screaming my head off, right? All the way down. And when I came out, I was like, man, I am alive. This is the idea that God is not approachable. If we are even moved by the creation, how much more when you get a glimpse of a holy God? This is what Timothy tells us. God, the blessed and only ruler, the King of kings and Lord of lords, majestic, who alone is immortal, and who lives in unapproachable light. You cannot come to God. You know how you wake up in the morning, someone flips on a light and goes like this? That's the idea multiplied by eternity. You cannot come to God. He is in unapproachable light. That's what makes the gospel so amazing. You can't approach God at all. This holy, awesome, majestic God is unapproachable. And this is the God who decides to approach you. When I think of this going forward, this is the plan God has for your life, right? It is God's will that you should be holy, sanctified. That's the word. I don't know how to explain that more than this. People ask me, I don't know what I want to do for my life. It's real simple. Know Jesus Christ and be holy in everything you do. This is God's will for you. It's not a secret. It's an open proclamation to you. That each of you should learn to control his own body in a way that is holy. Again, your body is holy and honorable. In this culture, it's the absolute opposite. Your body is a common thing. It's consumable. Anybody can enjoy it. And you don't have to have guilt about it. And honorable, not so much. Not in passionate lust like the heathens, those who reject God, who do not know God. This is God's plan for you. What's God's will for you is that you be holy. You don't need to be a missionary. You don't need to go to church every Sunday. Just take what's in front of you and be holy at that moment. That's all you need to do. That's all God wants you to do. He doesn't need you to save the world. He doesn't need your help. You're not that important. But he just wants you to just take what's in front of you, invite him into that, and make that. When I think of that going forward, the Hebrews tell us, make every effort to what? To live in peace with all men and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. You can do a lot of things and say you're with the Lord, but if you're not doing it in holiness, you're only talking to yourself. If we do things that are congruent with the holy character of God, we will experience his presence. That's God's purpose for our lives. That's God's desire. But here's our problem. By nature, we're rebels to these things. And you know it. Our culture is, our society is, our teachings are. By nature, we are strangers and rebels to holiness. Look at who's saying this. Woe to me, I cried, I am ruined. I am undone. Is the King James Version. I just love that one better. I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. This is, who's saying this? This is Isaiah, the most righteous man on the planet Earth, most likely, who speaks for God, who hears God, and this is his evaluation of himself. Why? Because he just got a glimpse of looking at the difference between him and God. When God approaches him, he gets a small glimpse. He sees if there's a precipitous fall, the difference between where he is and where God is, and he declares this. This should be very humbling for us, for you and me, to think in some way that we're not rebels to it, and we're not different than what God calls us to be, that we're just a little bit less moral than God, a little bit more moral than others. This is the person who's the most righteous person. When he gets close to God, he is undone. Everywhere you ever see God approach people, what do they sense? They feel like, I'm dead. I'm done. It's over. It's like death is visiting them. Not because of the evil in it, but because there's so much more life and life that is so strange to them, so threatening to their own existence. We are bent by nature against holiness. A holiness comes, and I really like this because who's coming to who? Right? Because it's an Old Testament gospel, really. Look what's happening. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, one of the angels flew to me with a coal, live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it, he touched my mouth and said, "See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned." This is the beauty of this whole passage. It's like the gospel in miniature in the Old Testament. It's such a beautiful story. We don't come to God. He's unapproachable. But somehow, God in His mercy and grace and His power comes to us. Maybe you feel like, I just feel like I'm just kind of walking. This is the Lord. As you're walking the Lord, with the Lord, He's still walking towards you. This is the heart of who God is. That He comes to where we are and comes to do what? To make us holy. What is this? So that our lips, that which we communicate, is holy. And our guilt and our sin, that we should have done, will be forgiven and atoned for. This is the majesty, the beauty of God, this holy God, who is immeasurably merciful in coming to us. This is the gospel of the Old Testament. Think about this now in the New Testament. John chapter 1 says this. The next day John saw Jesus, what? Coming toward him. The whole approach, when I was in middle school, they had this dance. I was really insecure at the time. And you know what happened, right? All the girls were just waiting, and all the guys, and there was one opportunity to ask this one girl, and I took 2 steps, and I went back and stood against the wall. It was just one of those things that were just so difficult for me to do, right? God, in Jesus Christ, approaches you. Not because of your beauty, but because nobody else will pick you. He approaches you because of His beauty, not because of yours. It would have been amazing if when I was wanting to, came to me first. You always kind of hoping that never happens. This is what it happens in the gospel. The most attractive, beautiful one that everybody wants. I said, Messiah, I'm coming to you. Jesus, John saw Jesus coming towards him. All those disciples, what were they doing? Just doing live fishing, right? And Jesus comes to John, comes to James, comes to Peter, he just comes to them, right? What are they doing? They're just living in this life, But it's this holy God comes to them. This is the beauty of the gospel to you. I don't know, sometimes you feel discouraged, but Jesus is always coming to you. We were studying in the men's Bible study that I'm Big Rex is leading, and we're in this passage where Jesus is crucified and the veil is torn, right? The veil is torn in the temple. So what does that mean? Access from man to God is now allowed, right? And so the thing is this idea that God is coming to man. And so we've been talking about awe, but when you look at this whole passage, it's this whole arc from awe to action. And that's really what the series will be. We're going to start with the awesomeness of God, awesomeness of God, and move towards us and what that means. There's so much there. But it comes to once when you really realize the awesomeness of God and how incredible He is, and this unapproachable light is approaching you, then it kind of moves you to a decision. And Isaiah can't help but to jump up Because here's the call. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Right? Who will do this? And what's the response? Here am I, send me. You'll find out that this is the worst call of all. He's going to a people who will not listen to him, who will not hear God's call. And God is saying, who wants that? Nobody will want that. But as they say, Lord, there's an unapproachable life. When you approach me, I can do it. I will do it. I just want to leave with one last thing for you as we kind of kick off this series, is that I think it's many times discouraging to walk in the faith because sometimes we fall, we're discouraged, or sometimes we lose loved ones, or prayers aren't answered. And I just love this little illustration that was given. It was this research that was done. And what they did was, they had this big fish tank, massive fish tank, right? And they put a fish in there, and they gave, all this wonderful food for the fish, and fish was enjoying life, right? And then they put in this big glass divider on one side of this really huge tank, right? And they put the food on the one side, and so the fish would go get the food, but always hit the glass divider repeatedly, over and over again. This happened for quite a time, and then you guess it, they did. They removed the glass divider. Now they fed the fish again with even better foods. But the fish had learned not to go. So what happened? Even though all the food was there, it stayed on its corner of the fish tank and was just floating around. What Jesus has done was remove the veil, that we can approach that which we can nourish us to fulfill the life He's called us to live. But sin and accusations of the enemy makes us feel like, no, you can't go there. You'll never receive that. You can look at it, you can hope for it, but you will never receive it, don't even try. And we get that sometimes in our Christian walk, or sometimes just trying to make sense in the doubts we have with God. The gospel is this: Jesus has died on the cross. The veil has been torn. The glass divider has been lifted. All that is available that God intends for you is now. That's the gospel. That's the good news. And it's from a holy God for you and for me. And so I pray whatever it is that you're going through, that you just respond to God and just say, God, this is part of my life I've just lost. Part of all of you, part of it. And I just want you to approach me again. That's your desire, whether it's to make a first time decision in Christ, or whether it's just to come again and really deal with a brokenness, an addiction, or a sin that you just quit. Like I can't do it anymore. But God today has given me hope. Let us pray.